I think the important thing to remember here is as he approaches this decision, President Trump actually has unique credibility with Iran because he gave the order to strike Qasem Soleimani back in early 2020. So he possesses enormous wasta, if you will, as he approaches this problem. It's going to be his decision to choose how is he going to use it. Are we going to try to negotiate now? The problem with negotiating with the Iranians is they're not great fighters, but they're remarkable negotiators. They will try to bog you down. They'll try to spin it out in time. And what they will try to do is stay on their task of destroying Israel and ejecting us from the region. So it's a particularly difficult decision for the president to make. If we go in and we strike this target, as we're talking about doing, we're probably not going to be able to completely eradicate the Iranian nuclear program, but we will set the nuclear program back.
Interesting. You mentioned Qasem Soleimani. I believe you did recommend to President Trump at the time that he be taken out. And a lot of people are looking at that as the beginning of a saga that brings us here today, that in fact closing the deal at Fordo and eliminating, by the use of American B-2 bombers and the Moab, eliminating what is left of that enrichment facility would be the bookend on something that you started that day, General. Is that correct?
Well, that would be President Trump's decision to actually execute that strike. And I believe you can make a point that it began a narrative arc that has taken us to where we are today. 2024 was the worst year in Iranian history in terms of foreign policy and defense policy, but it really did begin with the loss of Soleimani, who was their inspirational leader, the guy that could bring it all together for him across the region. After January 2020, he was no longer there, and they have felt his loss significantly.
It's really interesting as we try to understand the impact that had when it comes to communications with Iran's proxies, when it comes even to esprit de corps, if I can use that term, in keeping some cohesion among proxies and even within the Revolutionary Guard. The elimination of Qasem Soleimani speaks directly to the chaos and the lack of response, the chaotic response we're seeing now, does it not?
It absolutely does. The fact of the matter is the Iranian military, and particularly the IRGC, the Republican Guard Corps, they don't have good succession planning. People come into these jobs and they stay for many, many, many years. You don't have someone you can turn to if a person dies or is killed. And they felt that very keenly. They felt it in the loss of Soleimani. We see it right now in the loss of their equivalent of their chairman and the loss of the IRGC commander. It is having a profound effect on Iranian decision making. It's crippling it. It's making it very hard for them to come to coordinated positions on how to respond. And we see that every day in their ineptitude.
General McKenzie, we're getting headlines from Iranian state media right now that Iran will soon launch what they're calling a punitive operation against Israel. I'm reading these with you for the first time, citing Iran's chief of staff of armed forces on this operation, urging Israelis to evacuate Tel Aviv and Haifa. How should Israel respond to headlines like these, and is the Iron Dome enough to keep them safe?
The waves of Iranian attacks have had minimal success. I know that's easy for me to say here in the United States when buildings have been destroyed in Israel, but the Israeli success rate with their various systems, far beyond Iron Dome, has actually been pretty remarkable. The Iranians have thrown about all they can throw at Israel. There's not some secret deadly weapon out there waiting to be employed. They just don't have it. You'll see more of the same against Israel. I predict what will happen over time is that Israeli defenses will grow increasingly effective as they solve the way the Iranians are attacking. And the Iranians don't have an endless supply of these weapons as well.
We've been surging equipment into the theater, as I'm sure you know, more than 24 tankers, air-to-air refuelers. We're steering the USS Nimitz strike carrier group into the region. What does this collection of material illustrate to you that we may be preparing for?
First of all, it illustrates the excellence of the joint force, and our capabilities are global. We can flex anywhere very quickly. I think it's prudent planning by the Department of Defense. It's all about giving the president options. The decision to whether or not we're going to strike Iran is going to be a political decision. That is not a military decision. But what you want to do is ensure that the president has all the tools necessary to make that decision or to defer that decision if that's what he wants to do and protect our forces in the region. And so that's what's going on right now. It's pretty much another day at the office for the U.S. military. We're very good at this. Yeah. They're bringing them in so that we can prepare for really any contingency.
Some great reporting today in the New York Times about what it would take to strike Fordo, the underground enrichment site that we've already referred to. It's essentially underneath a mountain, General. And apparently the U.S. was involved here, the Pentagon, for several years trying to refine a strike plan if, in fact, it was needed. They found that it would require B-2s, several of them, releasing one Moab after another down the same hole before they got there. Were you involved in those experiments? Is that actually what it would take, regardless of whether it's decided to be used today? Is that what it would take to blow up a mountain?
So really, Joe, all I can tell you is we have very good plans. We have very good capabilities. We've studied the problem. We believe we have a solution to the problem. But that's really all I can tell you.
Well, when the general can't answer a question like that, I know we're getting warm on something here. Let me ask you further. There's also reporting that if we didn't, in fact, make that decision to use these bunker-busting bombs, that cutting the power might do it. A sabotage mission to cut the power to these centrifuges, which spin at supersonic speeds. Should that be in our playbook?
Every possible approach to this problem is in our playbook, and many of them are obviously also in Israel's playbook. Everything from different forms of cyber attack to power interruption to proxy attack direct on the ground. All of those options are on the table. All of those options have been thoroughly studied, and all of those options would be available should we choose to use them.
As we spend time with retired General Frank McKenzie trying to figure out the way forward here, I wonder the questions that you're asking as well about how far Israel is planning to go here, General. Is there a scenario that we should be prepared for that would involve Israeli boots on the ground in Iran and a very different mission to support?
Joe, I can't see that under any circumstance. Iran's a large country with a population of over 90 million. I can't see any possible way that would involve an Israeli ground invasion of Iran. Just not going to happen. I see some scenarios perhaps where the Israelis believe they can knock out the existing government. Now you're dealing with what is essentially a failed state, a dysfunctional entity, and in some ways that may be better than a state that isn't failing, but that has malevolent intent not only against Israel but against all of its neighbors. It would not be a good scenario for the people of Iran, who will be denied basic services for food, for medicine, for all the things that make life worth living. But to some degree, the only people to blame for that is current Iranian leadership.
General, you know what it's like to be in the Situation Room with the National Security Council, with the President of the United States. It appears that's the kind of day they're having today at the White House. We've already discussed the decision that President Trump is facing here, and I wonder if we could qualify this as the most important foreign policy decision facing a president since the withdrawal of Afghanistan.
It's certainly a big decision. And if you're in there as a military person, your job is to ensure that the people who make those decisions, the civilian leadership of our country, have all the options they need in order to execute whatever decision they choose. And then the joint force will faithfully execute those decisions.
There seems to be an expectation this decision is made today, General. How long is this window open for?
I think we have some flexibility in how we choose to approach it. I think the problem is for the Iranians, time works against them. They're weaker every day. They're more attrited every day. They're less capable every day. So I think the clock is working against them. It's working for us and for Israel.
Lastly, the president writing on Truth Social, General, you might have seen it. We know exactly where the so-called supreme leader is hiding, he writes. An easy target. He's safe there. We're not going to take him out, at least for now. Is the supreme leader eventually a target?
Don't know the answer to that. I do know that President Trump has unique credibility when he writes those words, and Iran is very much aware of that.